Anyway, so tonight was supposed to be just a discussion message type of thing. Like, there's no message formally, but an opportunity for us to talk about like the concept of rest and what that even means. As the elderly die next to us, we're playing card games. Because it definitely picked up the choking sounds. Anyways. But it was just like this, because the new series here is going to be talking about rest, and about the concept of rest and the importance of it, and what it is and how to do it, things like that. But we're starting off with this discussion as kind of like a baseline to even talk about it from our own perspectives coming into it beforehand. So let's discuss. The first question that I was given for everybody was just, what is rest spiritually?
Are we supposed to answer that?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a discussion.
It's where you rely on God to do the things for you, will aid you in doing the things, and you're not having to try of your own will to make these things happen.
I would say it's lack of attack.
Rest is lack of attack. I would say rest is like a break from all my judgments against myself and that constant judgment that goes on. It really wears me out and I get tired of it. But I really just want God to help me. I know He is. Start being able to hear when my critical self is talking to me, and that it's not my voice and not God's. That's a form of rest that I don't really know how to step into, but I'm going. That's the unknown place that I'm going to.
So with that stated, how would you define rest, just rest itself?
What it feels like?
No. If your definitions of spiritual rest are believing in God to do the things that you would need to do, not being attacked.
I didn't know that was the question.
Well, it was just a what is. Yeah. So then the other question is, what is rest itself? Removing spiritual connotations and just looking at it for itself.
It's peace. It's a place where restoration is taking place. We're being restored. We're being re-energized. We're being filled up. So that it's an off switch for any kind of work. And just an on switch for feeling peace, feeling God. And like I said, it's a restoration place. I should just stop there.
That was really good. It played that one.
What do you say, Jeremy?
For me, it was lack of attack and just a time of
No,
So-
like rest, without spiritual connotation. What is rest? If you were going dictionary definition,
Oh,
what is that?
no strenuous activity.
Means like. See. It's hard for you to see.
That's it.
How about for you, Dusty?
Oh, no. So let's see where we're at. We're at 169. Yeah.
I think Jeremy's was pretty good, but also like usually when you do, I mean like even in thinking in terms of like when you're giving your body a rest, or you know like even your brain, you know like some people even do like fasting to get their digestion tract or rest. Like it's even, I feel like it's even not some of those strenuous things, like even like more some of the what would be considered more mellow things, you even like take a choker on those.
Yeah.
But I don't really know what you would call it.
purging?
What is it?
Purging, where you're just like getting rid of
Yeah.
the toxic stuff. To start over. At least that's what, like when you were talking about digestion and fasting, that's what I thought of.
And what is the value of rest to you specifically? Not like a general question, not a general answer, but to you as an individual. What value does rest have to you? In either connotation, it doesn't really matter.
Can you say that again?
What value does rest have to you?
Value.
Yeah. Jeremy volunteered.
What's the value of it for you?
For me, if you don't get rest, you get overwhelmed. Because you have to have that point where you kind of recharge and recover from everything that's been going on.
What about you, Love? Or Dusty?
I think actually, I think that does go, is like a starting over. It feels like like a reset. And usually like, kind of like what Jeremy said too, like, you need, like, usually, if you go for a while without a rest, like, everything starts getting too overwhelming and you end up backtracking. Or like you feel like you can't handle it, so then you need a moment of like catch up.
Right.
And usually if people don't get that, like, it's pretty bad. It's what leads to rash decisions most often.
Is that kind of like where you yourself fall into? Because again, this question is
yeah.
specific to the individual, yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm dying right now. Let's aid in that. Let's do this really stupid thing.
Yeah.
I would say that the value of rest for me actually lies in how much I put it into like practice.
Mm-hmm.
If like it is extremely valuable to everybody, we know that, but it's really not all that valuable if we don't want it, need it so much that we're willing to take steps to learn it,
Yeah.
to do it. And I feel like for me, I'm definitely like, I've been put in a place where I have to look at how much I value rest, because I literally couldn't keep pushing and going on with my life the way that I was. My body was quitting,
Yeah.
but I still have a choice to value rest or to just value it in theory.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know, I feel like the value of it right now is much higher than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
It's much higher than it was last month. Like, it's growing a lot. Like, I'm realizing that I need rest to live in. It should be like a place that I start from.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like, it's a place I go to when I'm like, I gotta get away from this stress, I gotta get away from these pressures, these overwhelming decisions, things like that. And so it's like, I need a break, so I'm gonna go to rest. That makes it just like a place to go take a break.
Yeah.
And I feel like rest now is becoming so valuable to me that I'm aware, at least, and learning to practice that it should be a place where I reside, somewhere that I live in, and I start from there. I make decisions from there. I progress in maturity. I progress in like closeness to Jesus from there. And that, I don't know, just I've had it backwards this whole time.
Yeah. So, the next question, and just to like clarify something, I'm just asking these questions to get us started to talk about it, because this isn't like to be real about it, most of us in our spiritual walks at any point in time don't want to sit down and talk about something as seemingly mundane as the concept of rest. Because the truth is, most of us don't actually like have a staunch value for this subject. Everyone gets caught up in the ideas of what you should be doing for God rather than how to take care of yourself in the midst of serving Him.
This is what just happened to me.
Yeah.
This is why I now have to get sober and stop smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Because I was so focused on, like, trying to help other people that, like, I slipped into something else. I wasn't paying attention to myself.
You were like burning everything.
Yeah, like, I just was like, oh, like, I need to take care of this person, this person, this person.
And just using
Need to
yourself
make
up?
sure they're like, okay, but then I'm also, like, doing school. And then, like, lo and behold, I, like, kind of falling apart and not doing anything to keep myself together except for things that compromise my health and, like, sanity and things like that.
Yeah.
And now, which is funny, I think that's kind of funny because I just realized that, like, when we were, like, 5 minutes ago, that, like, that's basically what I'm doing, too, because I know that the only reason I can be sober and quit smoking is by asking God to help me to do those things, because it's really, really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That's like, but that shows that your value for rest is like, it's growing. It's like getting much higher in value because you're taking these like extremely hard steps.
So,
Things is not easy. I'm just saying quitting things is not easy.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you over the game over there. The last question that I have is this. Having looked at what rest is to you, what your value of it is, do you do it? When it comes down to it, and this isn't like a conceptual thing, realistically, look at the last year. Look at the last 2 years.
Or like the last week.
Or even the last week. And look at how you have functioned in that time. In those times, do you actually have a habit or a way of setting down, settling, and resting? Or do you just like to say that you do?
I don't, because I'm always, okay, when's the next? How long is this going to last? I don't actually, like, take the rest time for rest, because there's just more planning for the next issue that comes up. So I'm never actually fully releasing or letting myself truly relax.
Yeah. I thought you were getting ready to say something.
Because I was chewing.
So, if I was to say that the bet, I would bet cash and prizes that for the general consensus is the answer to this question is no, right?
I think, like, I do a pretty good job of resting when I'm being, like, real lazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, when you're just at that point where you're like, I don't care. It seems kind of, like, restful.
Yeah. I don't know. It ends up being like a debatable thing because there is a concept to discuss in the subject of escapism versus resting.
Oh.
Yeah. There it is. Because, like, there's this big thing where we don't, you know, just to be, like, honest about or clear about those things. it's like, again, this is not a subject that people jump to. I mean, everybody, realistically, when we sit down and talk about the Bible or talk about Scripture, we talk about God, everything comes back down to, or comes back to, you know, what are you supposed to be doing? And what do you do when what you're being told to do is rest?
That's such a good
She
question.
had one king, that's what I knew.
Rest. Take joy in what's happening now. Take joy in me in this process. Sit back. Sit down. Be still. These are literal words that I've heard God give to other people and to me. And it's just this whole thing where it's like, the funny thing about it is half of us, most of us, I would say, don't know what to do with those things.
Yeah.
It's just like God says, be still. It's like, oh, okay,
Well, what do I do?
what do I do?
How?
It's a trick question.
Yeah, it's not actually. It's actually in no way a trick question.
Suspicious.
No. If we don't fully know how to rest, it's because we don't really know what it really is and what it really feels like when we're doing it and how to get there. Like, if we're honest, we know that we want to have less, we want to have less pressure, we want to have less clamor, we want to have less chaos. We want to, you know, get a break from a bunch of things.
Right.
But that's all we know is what it's not.
Yeah.
We don't truly know what it is, or else we would be living there. We would be living in it.
Yeah. So, like, the next couple weeks, like, we'll end up talking about some kind of core tenets of the subject. There are only like 3 messages revolving around subject matter, I guess. Like, when we get to the final message, it's about kind of a how-to/conclusion type of thing where it just kind of brings it all together. But next week we're talking about Sabbath. The week after that we're talking about trust, and the week after that we're talking about rest itself. In the context of spiritual, personal rest. And the thing of it is, like, Sabbath, for example, like, it's funny because Sabbath has a lot of, like, religious connotation to it. And it's funny because, like, the way that we struggle with it is actually something that Jesus struggled with in the Bible because of the Pharisees and their concepts of rest, where it can become, like, a literal legalistic thing. We have that happens. But the value of the Sabbath was a very big deal. And it's a subject that I'll come back to again, but even God took a Sabbath.
Takes.
Yeah, takes. But specifically in the Bible, the reason why I use past tense is, like, in the Bible we have an example where he shows us that exact thing. Jesus took rests. He took time away to rest and recover.
Regularly.
Yeah. So there's this whole thing where, like, we have to understand that this whole Sabbath thing, it has value, it has merit that we need to consider for ourselves in life. The other part of it is trusting. And I appreciate, like, your statement there about things being suspicious. God saying, be still, just rest, stop it. And it's just like, well, that's suspicious, what do I do with that? Well, it's suspicious because you don't trust God. I mean, realistically, and this is a really big thing with rest, is trusting. Because Dusty said it right off the bat. Trusting God to do the things. Well, that's a big part of that trust element. Is trusting that he has this under control. Like, as it pertains to you, you can take a break because he's got stuff taken care of. But then the other part of it is just rest itself and how it pertains to us personally, is knowing what it is and what we need to do, where we need to be, and why it's so important to us. And it's only fitting that it comes on the back end of like the subject of spiritual warfare, where everyone's been so run down by all this bullcrap that we've all had to deal with that came up during that series. Well, now we have this series where we're talking about rest. Well, why? Well, because you just got given a list of things to do as far as like how to handle this huge part of life as a Christian. That, oh yeah, let's actually look at this this other component of reality and how they're trying to hurt you. And then, well, okay, that can put us in a place where we're on constant vigilance.
Or traumatized.
Right. But the other side of it is that now, let's look at the part where we let our guard down. Take a minute and just let God shelter us. Because we need to. Because we can't. If you're fighting talking about like demons, fighting a spiritual being who seems to have a limitless number and limitless energy because they make you believe that
Yeah.
by just like, replacing each other and covering each other in this way. One thing I don't know if I really like specified was just this point that they're not against each other in any way, shape, or form. Like they function as a unit, as a team, much better than we do.
Yeah. Why is that?
They know what they're doing.
So now you look at your card.
They don't have,
It's like,
what's the word for it? They don't have the egos that we have. See, they understand, they have a leader who they believe in and
Okay.
follow.
There you go. That's why.
Whereas most of us, like most Christians, our egos get in the way because we try to twist God to look like us. Or to have him be what we want him to be. But anyway,
Because they have a leader that they trust, they can like focus on doing one thing, what their mission is, I guess. And that's the problem with us in Rest and us and functioning as a team is like
yeah, when you say there's no rest for you.
if we had a leader that we trusted like that, we would be totally different people. We would be a totally different team.
yeah.
Because our leader's what unifies us.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, but making that statement about like just the way that they're a team and how they work together, for us, like being on the receiving end of that, we can feel just overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
10 against 1.
yeah. Well, it's 10 against 1 in waves, where it's just of 10. Where it's just like you have 10 on you and you cast them off, and suddenly 10 more show back up. And they're a completely different set of spirits. It's like the spirit of depression and his little team of depressionites came at you, and then you cast them off, and then the spirit of anger and his little angerites show up, and they work you over for a bit. But there's a place for us, and saying that even sets it up as this idea that it's just us against them, when the reality is it's God and us against them. And therein lies the place where we need to look at in order to find where we know we can rest in us. In the midst of the various turmoils, and not even spiritual warfare, just everything that life throws at us. Because this rest is bigger than just the context of spiritual warfare. Rest has a higher connotation because it covers so much more. It's such an intrinsic part of life. every physical body needs to sleep. But sleep alone isn't always enough. We all need days where we can just take a break from our emotions, from the strain of life, from our commitments, our obligations, even the things that are good for us. Like, I like that Dusty made that comment where even like some of the low-key things need to be put aside sometimes. It was when she was talking about the purging thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How it's not even just the high-stress stuff. Sometimes it's even the low-key things that need to be kind of like purged.
Because they do build up.
Yeah. It's like even when it's for a day.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing, was like even talking about the Sabbath thing, it was one day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like the end-all be-all as far as like rest stuff is concerned. Sometimes you need longer. Sometimes you need more. People are different, like, and there is room for that.
Mm.
But
That's important.
yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, and to be real about it, like even talking to you directly,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's not even about the person's personality. Sometimes it's about their circumstance.
Mm.
Where it's like if somebody's really messed up, hurt, wounded,
Mm-hmm.
recovering from something,
Mm-hmm.
they might need a lot more rest.
Right.
Like, I remember there was one point where God had me take a year off, almost a year off. It was like 8 months away from doing any form of church leadership stuff,
Mm-hmm.
any type of ministry. I barely even went to church during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because of just having dealt with it for
It was work.
several years. One church after another with whatever, annoying crap happened.
That was stealing your rest.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even have a concept of rest at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't take time to do it. I did the same thing that everybody does, where it's like, when you get your days off during work, or from work,
Yeah.
you spend your days off
Doing it.
doing errands and taking care of stuff that you can only take care of on your days off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, for each of us, realistically, like, this is supposed to be a discussion instead of just me yakking at you guys.
But at least you're talking, because sometimes you just ask the questions.
Yeah.
And we just stare at you.
Yeah.
I just
And
get stared
talk.
at a lot.
But you like it.
I am sexy. I mean,
No one's staring at you. You're looking in a mirror.
Whatever, Heather. What was I gonna say? Crap.
Got lost in your own thought.
Got him.
Of you.
I get lost in my own eyes. I occasionally make eye contact with myself in the little video thing.
Are you illustrating the ego problem?
No, a bit.
Okay.
Nathan plays back his videos. That was such a good one.
Oh God, I look so good in that one. Me. Anyway,
Nobody's gonna understand this, and they stare at this, going like, what the hell is going on?
this one I don't think is going on YouTube.
Why? Just because you're being real?
Vain.
I'm dangerous, because as your wife, I could totally make it seem to others like you just stare in a mirror naked all day.
Subjects in my hand.
I'm done.
At home, this is all he does. Be nice to me.
Whatever. I'm just gonna claim that that's projection. Rest, though. Right. Okay, question. And it's gone. Screw it.
It'll
There-
come.
Probably. Anyway, there. Even further than that, like. Oh, right. I remember what it was. Realistically, thinking about it, how much do you really get done by pushing yourself into constant states of exhaustion? And then when you're exhausted, how well does it work to continue exhausting yourself?
My productivity just skyrockets.
Yeah, I bet. It's like a question, for real. Jeremy, you can answer.
Yeah, so I had that capacity there, so, I mean, I was still hoping that we might get that. But I figured that was really quite
It's just little delusions that we have.
Oh yeah, totally.
I had 3 5s.
This will make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't it working? That doesn't make sense.
That's why we're here on this subject. That's why we'll be here on this subject through the end of the year.
Yeah, so what I was left with that.
Because that point in particular about delusion, that's huge.
Wow.
Okay, again, I'm going to make that statement. God took a Sabbath day. God takes Sabbath days. Why do we think we're different? Like we're physical beings trapped in this kind of like weird mushy shell on this earth. It gets old. It wears down. We can't even do like strenuous exercise for too long without lactic acid building up inside of our muscles and telling us you have to stop. And then it stays there through the next day and makes us sore, so we have to limit ourselves the next day. Every bodybuilder knows how much bullcrap that is. But the point is like, so we have such limitations, and yet we don't think that we need to take a break until we're forced to. And that's not even to talk about, like that's just physical. Physical's easy. We don't have a choice but to respond to that. If I get worn down to the point where I can't physically do anything. I still remember one example was a camping trip I went on. I went out on a camping trip. I woke up early in the morning. I went hunting with Chuck, my brother-in-law. Yeah. So I go hunting with him, and we were going over all these mountains because we were way up past the Clackamas River. So I'm going up over all these mountains carrying around my rifle. Right? Maybe it was his rifle. Either way, it was heavy. And then I'd come back down, have to pick up our camp, clear everything out, then go back home. And then from there, I went and played Ultimate Frisbee.
Oh my gosh.
By the third game of Ultimate Frisbee, I physically couldn't run anymore. My body was done. I was effectively walking around the field, and I couldn't stop because we were in the middle of the game. Or at least I wouldn't allow myself to stop.
Yeah.
And what was worse was I had people literally taking advantage of that. John, yeah, he's such a great guy. But that was the thing, was he like...
I hope you're watching, John.
I mentioned it offhand to him. I'm like, I feel like I can't run anymore. I think I should stop playing. And he was like, really? And so he started running all over the place around me. And he would specifically choose me to guard. It's just like,
You outed yourself.
you're a terrible human being. Anyway, but it's just this whole thing where, like, like I said, physical's easy. When we physically come to a point where we can't do anything, we can't, no matter how much we want to. But that's not even to talk about the emotional stuff.
Hmm.
Like when we need emotional rest. Oh boy. How well do we do that, guys? When we spiritually need to rest, like where we just need to stop and abide in God and His presence. And that doesn't mean sitting down and asking Him a bunch of questions about what we need to be doing, or asking a bunch of questions about what we can do better. It's literally just sitting down, and sometimes that doesn't even mean worshiping. Okay? It really is, because even that can become like a work thing sometimes. It really is just sitting down and being in His presence and being filled in that way. Where it's not even about doing something, it's about being and being present. So
Which
that-
is why it's so hard for us.
Right.
We don't know how to be present, and if we don't know how to experience contentment in any circumstance, because you have to be content in order to rest and let stuff go. You have to be okay with that, or you're just going to spend your rest time working because you're freaking out, or plotting ahead, like you're saying.
Yeah. Plotting ahead.
So, like, yeah. Contentment is like a huge part of the recipe, I think, for rest. And knowing just how to just be.
Thank goodness. That's all I have. Thank goodness.
It's kind of like we constantly have something to prove.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because, like, we talk about, one thing that I've had thrown at me a lot is that I have a poverty mindset. We talk about poverty mindsets in terms of, what we deserve, and a lot of the time that comes on, like, physical stuff, where it's like, what I've heard it most on is with people, like even with the context of, like, me, where I've had people lob that one at me was over my belief that I was going to get, like, a job or money or things like that. But what we don't think about is that we can have that same kind of mindset as it pertains to our relationship with God. Because some of us carry a poverty mindset as it pertains to what relationship will look like and can look like. We tend to look at it as, I will only ever be a servant. I can't be more than that. He calls us all his bride, but, that doesn't mean anything. It's not like a wife has any value to a husband. At the highest. And that's the point. That's why he says that. It's why when Jesus talks about, it's part of, like, why when Jesus talks about the word sexual sin, he talks about adultery. Because it's the breaking of that marriage. It's this whole thing where for God and His perspective, He values that more than anything else. It means so much because there's a commitment there that runs really, really deep. And the problem with it is that we don't see that we have intrinsic value. We have to try to prove ourselves and prove that we have value. So we have to work really, really, really hard all the time to be appreciable, to be decent, to be acceptable into heaven.
Get by.
Yeah. What we don't see is that he's trying to see, help us understand that we're loved and honored and beautiful, and that we can rest because we don't have to work that much. We don't have to serve him all the time. Sometimes he wants to serve us. Sometimes he wants to give to us and for us to just receive. It's like when on your birthday, when somebody gives you a present, they give you something that you actually like appreciate and really enjoy. Like it's like literally the kind of thing where like they asked you what you wanted and then you told them and they get you that, and it was something astronomical, something that
You didn't expect to actually?
yeah, you didn't actually expect to get.
Mhm.
Or maybe you didn't deserve because you just had a fight with them
Mm-hmm.
a week before and really hurt them, but they showed up anyways and to provide you this present. Whatever the case, it puts you in a situation where it's something that you don't think you should have. What do you do with that when you get that? Well, you appreciate it, right? Do you immediately like set out to try to like work for them to make it right, to make yourself deserve it? Or you just accept it because you understand that this is something that's done in honor of you?
And what do they want from you? Because, like, the giver actually wants to see you receive it. They want to see you get the blessing out of it. They don't want you to, like their satisfaction comes in that, watching that. That's what they're hoping for when they give you something. But we don't understand that. We just automatically assume that what they're looking for is for us to give back at the same capacity. We don't understand that the gift back is receiving.
To just be happy with what you have.
Yeah, because that's what they want to see.
But it's not like God could ever want us to just be happy with what we have, right? Like, is that a thing? Jeremy, Dusty, what do you guys think?
You said 70?
You mean to be happy with what we have after Jesus? Okay?
That's not a thing?
Well, like, I don't think he wants you to just, like, even, I think he always wants to give you more stuff, like, different gifts, not always, like, the ones that you ask him for, but the ones that he sees that you need.
Yeah,
And I think he would.
You also have a timeline as well, right?
I think though too, like I was actually thinking about this the other day. I don't think that most people even realize the gifts that God gives them until much, much later. Like years later even. And this takes that time because you didn't actually know what you wanted until that much later. And you realize that he granted you those things or like gave you those things before you even knew that they were a thing.
Yeah, but I just remember quoted on the top.
Yeah, they weren't like.
But I
Yeah,
think
these look
what
like
he
they're
wants
extreme
too,
knots. Then they've done
which is
like
probably one of the hardest things to
or
do,
a mushroom on it. Yeah.
is for you to just trust him to like
There was a-
take care of you
Yeah, there are a
and
lot of
give
hamburger,
you
a lot of cheese and
gifts
stuff
and
like that.
things. But it's kind of hard to like just
But that cat food.
relinquish all the things in your life to God.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is.
It would be pretty hard for me to like be
So
like,
if you're really
okay,
happy
God,
and the girls are playing soccer.
do all of my
Hey, no
do all my
problem.
finals for me this
All that
next 2 weeks.
didn't even show up
Go.
on.
I feel like when I think about something like that, it makes me feel really uneasy. And I feel like it wouldn't get done, and that's kind of a crap thing to think.
She does.
Well, yeah, because then you're just constantly bracing yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So then that makes it even more,
Thinking,
you know?
okay, I can't rest at least until after
Right, right.
this
And I don't think it,
Yeah.
finals or whatever.
yeah, it was.
So you kind of just like don't even count it as a possibility in your mind anyway. So it's like
Yeah, that is
Well,
it
then-
doesn't even appear like it's an option. You're right in the middle of finals.
It's like it's hard to know where the line is in like how much you put in versus how much God puts in. I think.
Yeah.
Like, because you have to at least give an effort in things, and it's hard to like know when you're being controlling
Yeah.
versus whether you're actually trusting it. Even though in some things it's pretty clear when
Yeah,
you're
I don't
not
know it either.
trusting, I suppose.
And it's like we're really afraid of the other extreme,
It's like a big sponge down there.
which is like that we do nothing for God, that we, you know, are just thankless and lazy and all this stuff. So it's like we opt for the extreme that's like
Yeah. Like-
working harder, giving more. It's like that one looks
We're
better
gonna get those more.
somehow than chancing the laziness and the stagnancy and all that. Strange. It is strange, but it's like definitely how we think. We're
Mm.
confused about where the line is, so we just shoot for. We don't know what we're shooting for.
Well, you almost always end up shooting for one of the extremes,
Yeah.
never the middle. Like,
Yep. Because
Um,
where's the middle?
yeah.
That comes from not knowing what he expects of us.
There's like a real big thing to moderation, and most people have a really hard time finding that point.
I thought you were looking for red.
So in the midst of all that, like in the midst of that receiving, there's still that question though. Do you think like it that God wants you to be happy with what he gives you in the midst of all of that? Or is he always displeased, or is he always waiting patiently at times to give you more?
I feel like he always wants to give you more. Like, I don't feel like he wants you to just be happy with what he gives you, because he's always got. It's hard to like,
You're talking about
because like
spiritual hunger?
some things I feel like he wants you to appreciate, to be able to appreciate, and to understand them. But sometimes it just takes you so long to understand. And then when you're able to, he can grant you more things, what be it like things that you do need like physically in the physical realm, or like for knowledge or things like that. But I guess that is part of the place where you would put like your effort to understand. But yeah, I think he constantly wants to like be giving. I mean, it's just like Evan. Like everybody wants to give Evan things all the time. Because you know, like the instant you see something that has Mickey Mouse on it, you're like, oh my god, Evan would love that. He would just die. And like you get it for him, you give it to him, but then like the next day you see like another thing that has Mickey Mouse, and you're like, oh, Evan would just love that. Even though he's got like 20 people giving him Mickey Mouse stuff all the time. And he's always like,
Well, that's the thing, there's so much delight in watching him enjoy what you give him.
I was gonna ask,
It's like
like,
he can't stop.
isn't the point of giving him that stuff to like bring him happiness?
yeah.
And then he gives it, he shows it,
But then
receives it, so it feels good.
that's also how you risk spoiled brats.
It's true.
And,
Yeah,
Too much at once.
but at least God knows
Hers, mine,
how to not make us spoil brats. That's where, like, we don't trust him, I feel like.
I don't know. I'll admit, I've felt like a spoiled brat a few times.
Yeah.
Like there have been times where I've prayed for something or whatever, and then threw a temper tantrum because it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Just because it was like, but he always does this. What?
Well, there have been things that I've prayed for, like, all throughout the years since I was younger. And, like, I've thrown, like, bits about them and stuff. And, like, sometimes I would get things that I prayed for, and sometimes I wouldn't. But I realized, like, a lot of things that I prayed for that I didn't get, I was very thankful for later on, you know, way later on. Many years.
When it makes
Ahead.
sense to you, because you can see whole picture.
Yeah.
well, there's no pile, it's just a
And then
rock.
some of the things that I did end up getting, like, more like, is it, you know, like physical, like clothes and things like that. Sometimes I'd end up really disappointed with it.
He's gonna unload his hand though now.
Anyway. So we'll end up going back over those subjects of Sabbath, trust, and rest again, like throughout the course of this, because there is a sort of rhyme and rhythm that we all need to start finding in our lives to include God, and also to take that time and rest. Because like that thing about escapism versus rest, like those aren't the same thing. Sometimes escapism can help you rest, but a lot of times what it really does is just like buries your feelings.
I didn't know that.
Probably, I was like thinking about that after you said that, like, most of the time when I'm being real lazy and watching movies, I'm like, oh dude, I wish I could be in this movie.
Yeah.
Wish that was my life.
Well, I know like some of the things that I'll do, like I noticed that I have a few different things that I'll do that just to like stop feeling things for a minute. because I noticed that, like, I hate this, and I hate to admit it, even though Heather will probably appreciate this deeply.
What?
I noticed that, like, one thing I'll do is, like, if I get emotional, I'll immediately open my phone up and, like, turn on Pokemon Go.
Oh,
Don't judge me.
I don't
Anyway.
appreciate that.
Or the little Jurassic World game I have. I'll turn on one of them to distract myself from what I'm feeling, because I'm escaping from what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm. It's like a big scary monster.
Yes.
So you have to do everything you can to pretend like it isn't there.
At least until it
'Cause
calms
if you
down
look
for a
at it,
minute.
yeah, because if you look at it, it could scare the pants off of you.
Yeah. But I mean, like, that's an example of an unhealthy escape, because it becomes the kind of thing where it's like it becomes really easy to bury what's happening. And there's no rest in that, because what it does is it just sits in there, and it stays in there, and then it compounds with the rest as you bury more.
Right, so undercurrent
Yeah,
is exhausting.
yeah.
Even though we think that the undercurrent won't be there, that we think that it can stop with our escapes, but it doesn't, and that's what we need to realize. It doesn't stop. It's still using you up, wearing you out. It just keeps on going.
I also was doing with like alcohol, like if you're like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
I don't feel good tonight, or like, oh dude, I feel like really bored, or I'm really overwhelmed with homework. Let's drink all night. It's a good idea.
It'll
And then
go
let's be
away.
hungover for like the next 2 days and feel like absolute shit. You know, this feels great. Yes.
Yeah.
Love drinks.
At least I can control what I feel.
Yeah.
And now I have even more problems today than I had yesterday.
Uh-huh.
It's 4.
Yeah. Anyways. But I think we'll call this discussion here, because there's no real conclusion thing. It's just, this is something to be mindful of and to think about, like these questions, and also just knowing what's coming as far as the rest of the series is concerned. The whole intention of it, just like the spiritual warfare thing, what the intention was to bring us into a situation where we can be active and participating in a part of life that we're running from all the time. Because with spiritual warfare, we don't acknowledge it, and then it beats the crap out of us all the time. Rest is another extremely important part of life that we run from, ignore, and it beats the crap out of us all the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's like two extremes. One involves an emotional, spiritual war and battle that we're continuously stuck in, and this one involves recovering from everything that we're going through. And recovering on a continuous basis, not on the, oh my gosh, I've come to a point where I've literally broken down and I'm forced to recover kind of situation. Because that's bad. That's just really, really bad. You'll recover, but at the same time, you'll carry those scars for the rest of your life, to some extent. And it puts us into weird modalities where we don't believe in... We start believing weird things about how God doesn't trust, how we can't trust God here, or we can't believe in Him here, or that He doesn't or we can't believe in happiness, or we can't believe in love, or we can't believe in all these little things where we're supposed to be able to know that that stuff's real and live in that
You might want this.
and participate in that.
Yeah.
In truth, rest is an extremely, extremely important thing. That's for spiritually, emotionally, physically, it's something that we need and will always need as long as we exist.
King. And
If God rests, we'll probably need to rest even in heaven,
20.
realistically.
Red
You
and
were 10.
8.
So,
Maybe we'll even enjoy it.
it might take that amount of time.
Yeah, 8.
Anyway,
Back.